Ella Leon said, I was mentioning the demographic shift of Mexicans in the U.S. It's cool in the Southwest, but it changes America when they're in Kentucky and Alabama, etc. And yeah, I would definitely agree. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a state where there isn't a community of more than likely Mexicans, though it could be other people, Salvadorians, Guatemalans. Seems kind of like the runners up, but you're finding them all over the place. And this is something that a lot of people kind of wrestle with, you know, like the reality is this: if the United States didn't want Hispanic immigration, then it wouldn't get involved in Hispanic America, right? This is a reality that Hispanic immigration into the United States, I believe, is done purposely. I believe the United States does want Hispanics, and I mean the official establishment, not what they let you see on CNN or Fox News, but the actual people who run and own the country. They want more Hispanics here because, you know, what's kind of the things we touched on. The reproductive rates aren't there. So you need more people. You want cheaper people, and not only cheaper people, but you want better quality labor. And the reality is that Hispanics are very hardworking people. You're even starting to see a phenomenon in states like Oregon where the Hispanics are actually making more money now than kind of the white laborers, because the Hispanics work better. And so the market dynamics in Oregon are such that if you're going to hire, you know, lumberjacks or people in the hemp industry to kind of work those farms, you'll pay more to a Mexican to do it because he's going to be more productive. But again, you know, I kind of empathize with, you know, Black Americans and white Americans a bit, because, you know, this is in a sense your elite selling you out to be able to get bigger profits. They want bigger margins. And so what they do is that they involve themselves in Latin America. Anytime a country in Latin America sets up programs that the United States doesn't approve of and starts to see some success, you will see the typical coup. You will see the typical economic, financial manipulation. So, you know, for example, a lot of these people are talking about the caravans from Honduras and El Salvador. Well, you know, what they don't tell you is that there was a coup in Honduras, I think in 2010, where they took out Manuel Zelaya, because Manuel Zelaya wasn't aligning himself with the United States. He was aligning himself more with kind of the Cuba and the Venezuela and the Nicaragua thing, right? He was trying to go that way. And the U.S. didn't want to lose its base. The U.S. has a base in Honduras. So essentially, the U.S. controls Honduras. But they don't tell you that on Fox. They just tell you there's all these migrants coming out of Honduras and other Hondurans are the bad people. But if you just left Honduras alone, Hondurans won't leave their country. So this is a reality, you know, and this is something that Black and white Americans need to wrap their heads around to see, like, if we want to preserve any kind of American culture, we need to stop messing with Latin America, because all it's doing is Hispanicizing the Americas. You see, it's blowback. It's the pendulum swings. It's the snake that eats its own tail. So that's the reality. Nobody gets up and leaves their country because they want to. They leave because they don't see any other options. It's real easy to say, oh, fix your countries. But what people don't realize is that the U.S. is constantly working to mess them up. Your tax dollars go to mess up countries in Latin America to create conditions so that they can extract the labor force. And that's what happened in Mexico specifically. Through NAFTA, they essentially made it so that Mexican small plot farmers couldn't make money anymore, because now they have to compete with American agriculture, which is very mechanized and subsidized. So they can't compete anymore. They lose their farms and they go up north to be cheap labor. And that's what NAFTA wanted to do. It wanted to absorb cheap labor from Mexico. And that's exactly what's happened. So you see how these kind of these short-sighted policies, again, because you have a system that prioritizes profits above even common sense and logic. I'm getting a little bit of feedback from one of you guys. Anyways, so yeah, so you know, it's not really fair to blame Hispanics for Hispanicizing America. We're going to continue Hispanicizing America as long as you don't let Hispanic America be itself. And the reality is, historically, the policy is to not allow Hispanic America to be itself. From the very foundation of this country, it's always sought to intervene in Latin America. So, you know, you have to choose. And this is kind of like the rough reality that I think we're all coming to, where it's like, you know, the United States, let's call it the Anglos, don't want competition from Latin America. So they got to keep it, you know, crumbled, and they got to keep cooing, and they got to keep doing economic hitman type of operations. They got to keep, you know, they got to keep messing the place up. But the consequence of that is that, okay, you get to maintain a certain hegemony economically and militarily, but the cost that you're not seeing is that, well, you're losing swaths of land because they're becoming the majority in more and more corners of the country. It's no longer just the Southwest and the southern tip of Florida. It's outside of DC. It's North Carolina. It's Kentucky. I went to Dodge City, Kansas for a trade show once, right? And there I found a Mexican community. So, you know, it's going to continue to happen so long as the machine here puts profits before people.
Rancho, you have NAFTA importing corn from the United States into Mexico. Yeah. They're bringing water to the well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the corn thing is really, really interesting because this is how you know how the American system works. So your taxes, everybody's taxes in here, if you're an American, you know, employee or businessman, you pay taxes to the U.S. government. The U.S. government gives subsidies to farmers, corn farmers in Iowa, who farm industrial stuff. They farm cheap GMO industrial shit, which is essentially a subsidy to Monsanto, right? So, you know, they take $100 from us, they give $100 to the farmer, and the farmer has to give 95 of those dollars over to Monsanto to make his operation work. So really what we're doing is we're giving a subsidy directly to Monsanto. And now this cheap American GMO corn that makes you grow titties and, you know, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for you, is able to be sold artificially cheaply in the international market, right? Because the farmer doesn't make money from the corn, he makes money from the subsidy. Meantime, the corn in Mexico is like these heirloom, you know, varietals of corn that have been around for thousands of years and preserved for thousands of years, that, you know, in a sense, they've been naturally genetically modified, right? This is natural genetic modification, husbandry, as they call it. Meantime, those farmers, you know, because they're farming in a more traditional way, they can't sell it so cheap as the American corn. So they get priced out, right? So the Mexican farmer with his organic, you know, heirloom corn varietal has to sell his corn at $6 a pound in order to, you know, make a little bit of money to come back next season and make us more corn. But the American farmer, you know, the industrial farmer is able to sell it for $3 a pound. So there's no way that the Mexican farmer is going to be able to compete with the American farmer. And that's programmed. And so now what happens to that Mexican farmer? Well, he closes up his farm and he moves up north to go work at a shoe factory or whatever the fuck they're doing out here. So you see how the United States is extracting the peasant and working class from Mexico, just like you could see that it's extracting, you know, the gold and the copper and the oil, you know, at different times in history. So, you know, it's a square deal. That, again, nobody, if you know, why did I come here? My parents come from Nicaragua, right? You know, what happened in Nicaragua? Well, the U.S. installed a dictator. Then they didn't like the dictator, so then they kind of, you know, indirectly padded up the quote unquote socialists to come in and take him out. And then after the socialists got in, then they paid for the Contra to make war on the country for another 10 years. And so then people fucking are starving and they got to go somewhere. And so if you have an uncle or a cousin that's doing, you know, decently well in the States, well, then that's where you go. But, you know, if you gave me a choice, if I was going to grow up in LA or back on my family's farm in Esteli, I'd much rather be in Esteli on my mountains on horseback than I would have been in LA, as much as I have loved and I do appreciate the experience and all of that. But again, people don't leave their countries by choice. They leave them because they don't see other options. Things are that bad. But who controls that dynamic? That dynamic is really controlled at the top. So if Black Americans don't want to see themselves outcompeted, if white Americans don't want to see themselves outcompeted, which I empathize with, right? You need to bring it up with the people who run the country, and not take it out with the people whose country you or your leaders and your elite ruined.
Lo siento, man. My phone died, and then I was having some internet problems. But
okay.
Now what you said was right, bro. You're dead on, because like, one, the illegal immigration situation that's going on right now is completely manufactured, and it's manufactured by design by the people at the top. The Wall Street boys. This is what they've been doing now for like the last century. And a lot of this is
doing it from the beginning.
Well, yeah.
Jefferson wrote that we gotta take the north, or what would be the north west from Mexico. He wrote this in his letters. We gotta take that land from them. We gotta expand in that direction. The United States was involved in Central America being broken off from the Mexican Empire. So these people have been involved. They were involved in taking Puerto Rico and the Philippines and Cuba. This thing has been the same case. This is what I'm trying to.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with you, but I was talking specifically more about like the immigration.
Yeah.
Right. Because like during that time, they didn't let people come here. Right. They were just more interested in extracting the resources from the land over there and having the people work there. Now, because they could exploit the the peasant class here in the United States. So there was no need to have a peasant class in the United States. Now it's different with the immigration coming in. They need that underclass to do the things that they don't want to pay higher wages for, or that Americans don't want to do. And like, I agree with you, what you said with that, like, that you empathize with, the Black and the white Americans that don't want to be replaced in their own country. Like, I can understand that. I could totally feel that, because, I don't want Mexicans replaced in their country either. Right. And there's got to be a way to be good neighbors with each other. Right. So I think that what you're saying
that is the logical thing. But when you live when you have a worldview that prioritizes profits, which is the worldview of the Anglos, which they share with the Ugandans, it's impossible to be a good neighbor, because you're constantly, breaking one of the commandments. You're coveting what is your neighbor's.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, bro. But the thing is, for at least from Mexicans that I know, like back home, and people who have traditional lives, like, my shorty was telling me that her family has, for a long time, they had a farm, they had ganado, and they had done the traditional life. And a lot of the younger generations, like her uncle's generations, right? So like her grandfather was doing this, and like say her uncle's generation, they don't want to work that hard, back-breaking farm labor, and they're tempted to come up to the United States, to do easier jobs, even if it's just like dishwashing or whatever, right? So like, yeah, they're struggling here, but they're still making better money, and then they're also not breaking their back, but they're giving up a lot. So some of the younger kids are seeing that out there, and they're being wise, and they're making moves to kind of like be that next generation and take the lands that the older folks are going to leave them, and do something with it. Another problem is like the cartels, and how like the cartels don't let you live out there, really. Like, yeah, they, if you mind your own business, you can live and whatever, but they want a cut of everything, right? So like they're involved in the avocado trade. They're involved in all the stuff that like extortions, and they'll charge you protection money, or or just money. They say like, oh, you got to give us a percentage of what you make and what you produce. And it's hard to have a free business out there, because the government is so corrupt. The cartels and the criminals run everything, and there's no protection. So it's hard to get ahead in Mexico and have your property there. So it's a difficult situation.